Today I'm drawing Whitebeard, also known as Edward Newgate from One Piece, using only blue pen. I begin by laying out the overall proportions because Whitebeard's massive frame is one of the defining parts of his design. He kind of reminds me of um, there's an archetype in anime that has reoccurred in at least a few animes and probably way more, but I can't remember any names or even visualize more than just a few. So there's Dudley from Street Fighter, and then there's from Full Metal Alchemist. I forgot the guy's name, but there's a guy who looks just like Dudley from Street Fighter. And then there's also the overall like butler archetype, right? That kind of appears in both of those two characters I just mentioned, that Dudley from Street Fighter 3 and the guy from Full Metal Alchemist who has a similar appearance. And so Edward Newgate or Whitebeard, he has a similar type of appearance as well. Now I don't know if their personalities have any similarity, so I can't really talk about that. Or I can't use that to describe what his character is because I haven't watched any of the show with him in it. Or you know, when I was a kid watching, I probably seen him, but I don't remember anything about his personality. I think I seen him standing on top of a building at one point. Like that's all I can remember. In one of the earlier episodes, when I was flipping through channels as a kid watching on a day off from school. But it was, you know, morning cartoons that would air on TV. I heard a little bit about his personality in an Instagram reel, but it just wasn't anything that would be relevant to this picture. Also, his face being covered by the walrus thing, aka the mustache, doesn't allow for much facial expression or even maybe get for me to guess. And then that's just another thing with the show is that the like I described in earlier videos, characters in One Piece usually their personality is shown in their actions, their words, their voice tonality, and like how they would choose to handle a scenario. Like if anything happened, what would be the type of choice that they would make, and what would be their reaction to it, and their overall maybe mentality and choice of thoughts. Like that has way more to do with the character's personality in this show. So that's what I'll just say about the personality real quick is that I cannot break his character down because I don't know who he is at all because I have not watched enough of the show. And then the parts of the show that I could even vaguely remember seeing him in, I didn't remember him saying anything, or I can't remember what he said and what his voice tonality was like, and where I could vaguely remember Luffy and actually guess his personality correct in a prior video when I drew him. I said that from what I remember when seeing him when he was a kid, he's like a very playful, carefree, very, very he's a very good guy protagonist, like pure good guy protagonist, always positive, always, yeah guys, let's do this, and then just like jumps off like a minor hill and then runs off leading his army of pirates to the next battle or to find the next treasure, and he's positive and happy all the time, and he's humble, and any like stereotypical positive trait you could put on a protagonist, maybe you'd apply some of the traits depending on what the plot is and what the show angle is. You could just slap all those on him. He's a poster boy for that, just like kind of like Goku. Another reference I was making, but Edward Newgate, I can't remember, so I can't speak on that. But I'll continue to break down the actual drawing I saw from the reference that I use of him. So once the body structure is established, I work on the head, the facial features, and his iconic crescent-shaped mustache. Next, I build the captain's coat and focus on the clothing folds to give the drawing more depth. There's no shading, so that's where the proportions of that done properly and darkening outer lines of things so you could see exactly where certain things are placed would help create the depth instead. Also, somebody just knowing what he looks like and looking at the photo, they would easily identify it, obviously, but I at least portray it so that it's easy to identify without shading. And then one, and maybe details as well, obviously, in proportions of where the details should be placed or would be placed. Once the body structure is established, I work on the head, facial features, and his iconic crescent-shaped mustache. I did say that. Next, I build the captain's coat and focus on the clothing folds to give drawing more depth. I did say that. As the sketch develops, I refine the torso, strengthen the outlines, and adjust proportions where needed. This drawing was an excellent practice for oversized anatomy and balancing large shapes while keeping the character recognizable. Kind of reminds me of like any series where there's a larger character, like Broly from Dragon Ball Z. Very major example because I've drawn this recently and I've mentioned this very exact thing. Or whenever I draw these larger scale characters, I would always mention this in the videos that, oh yeah, it's a good practice. In a certain verse, not everybody looks the same, but there might be some type of coding to how all characters look and how their musculature will look to a certain extent. And all of that has to get expanded while keeping all the proportions lined up the way that they should for that person's anatomy in that verse. And then also the details have to be proportioned on top of that larger structure. So it's good practice doing that, right? So that your art style, based on the art style that you're actually doing, is improving regardless of like what the scale of size is for the character or thing that you're drawing. And it's not even just that something zoomed in, it's that this is actually a larger thing, right? If it was zoomed in, you just probably have less of it to draw on the paper because you're closer to it, right? Strengthen the proportions where needed. The drawing is okay. Overall, I'm happy with how the final piece turned out. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to subscribe and let me know which anime character you'd like to see next, and thank you for watching. Did finish the script, but I'll just follow along with what's going on. So after the initial skeleton, obviously it's not really visible right now, but that it started with the idea of the musculature over it and the balls for joints, and started not with the ear, because I from what I remember, there's no ear on him, but the ear area, or it's like a small area for the ears because the mustache was kind of blocking it, and then built out the rest of the face, and then neck, chest, arms, the coat, where the coat was placed and laying over chest and arm and shoulder structure. And then sometimes bridging the gap with details helping, sometimes bridging the gap with just drawing the structure, but you usually always structure first, and then getting all the details within that structure later on, or helping bridge the gap into further structure nearby with some of those details, or just, like I said, merging into structure farther out in the photo, like from his chest to his torso, from his shoulder to his arm, from the shoulder area of the coat to the more arm area, right? And where the buttons will be placed in alignment with, like, the shoulders and the arms. and then the torso into the belt. And as I've already drawn these things, like I said, if going back and filling in further details afterwards to make sure that based on the reference I'm looking at, like, am I placing everything where it should go to help create his overall appearance? So when you just glance at it, you could tell it's him. And if you try to look at any details, these are details that are relevant to him or that somebody would expect to see on him, or that it makes sense for him as a character. Because obviously he doesn't look the same in every photo, and not just because of how he's placed, his body's placed, right? So thank you so much for watching.